Hi, and thanks for joining me for another Low Technology Institute video. Today we're going to be talking about chopping wood. I'll be showing you how I use a splitting maul as well as a splitting axe to break up these large 2-foot diameter logs for firewood. These were the only logs I had access to, and they're a little bigger than one would really want for making firewood just because they're so large and unwieldy. Right now I'm looking for what are called checks, or pre-existing splits in the wood, and I just kind of want to follow along those splits. And I'm using the splitting axe not really to split this large log because it's so big, but just to score a line. And this starts to open up the cells in the log so that when I put my maul in, it will split along this line nice and clean. And now here I'm driving in a wedge with an 8-pound sledgehammer. And there's a difference between using a sledgehammer or a splitting maul and a splitting axe. The sledgehammer depends on its weight. And here you can see as I lift it up and drop it, I'm not using excess force. I'm not adding a lot of force to it. I'm letting the weight do the work. I store kinetic energy by lifting it up, and then the 8 pounds dropping is enough to split it. I don't have to blow out my elbows or shoulders putting a lot of force into it. Let gravity do the work. And so you'll see here the large log will split right along that middle line, and then I'll go back to the axe, which has a completely different motion because it is light. You can either use a lot of weight with a medium amount of speed, which is what the sledgehammer is, or you can use a little weight and a lot of speed, which is what the axe is. And it takes a minute here, but you can hear the thunk change as this splits. And here I'm only splitting across a 1-foot seam instead of a 2-foot seam like I had to at the beginning. But you can see this is a much faster strike, and I'm still not putting a lot of speed, and I'm still not putting a lot of effort into it. I'm actually cracking the axe like a whip. And I'll show that from a different angle and explain a little more of what I mean. And here I just need to use the maul to get that little split apart. Now I'm going to do something you shouldn't do, which is using the handle to split apart something that didn't want to go. It's much better to use a 2x4 or some other piece of wood you don't mind cracking. I did it in this case because I knew it was barely hanging on just by a few strands. Now I want to illustrate how to use a splitting axe. And I'm using a lot of information from my years of Japanese sword work. I'm gripping it using the ring and pinky finger strongest. The left hand provides the power. It's the one that kind of drives the axe down, and the right hand is the one that steers. I lift it up to a 45-degree angle, and I let it come down until my left hand is about at the level of the top of the wood, and then the head swings around and kind of cracks like a whip. It doesn't actually crack, but it's the same motion as cracking a whip. And this really adds a lot to the speed. And as you can see here, I'm having a little trouble getting through the tip of this quarter because there was a knot in it. That's what made it so tough to get through. Another part of this technique involves something called tenegui, which is as the axe comes down and reaches the end, I don't stop it by jerking back or using my muscles to hold it back. I actually stop the motion of the axe by twisting. The left hand twists towards the right and the right hand twists towards the left. Basically you follow the directions your thumbs are pointing, and tenegui means a rag or a cloth in Japanese, and it's like that squeezing, wringing motion that you use to get water out of it. It's the same motion I use to stop the downward motion of the axe without having to jar my joints. And here we go in slow motion. You can see I bring it up to about a 45-degree angle, draw down with my left hand until it's parallel to the top, and then whip the head around. And that whipping action really adds a lot of speed. Even though it's not a very heavy axe, it can really split wood. And so now I'm going to continue cracking up this quarter, and as you can see, the logs just fall right off. I'm not really using a lot of effort, which is nice because that means you can split wood a lot longer. And here you can see a little bit of how I split up these larger chunks instead of just splitting them in half and then in quarters and then in eighths. I start the splits along one axis. Here I do a couple of parallel cuts following the grain of the wood, and then I turn the whole log and cut perpendicular. and this actually will split out the logs that I'm going to use to burn. This is a tactic you can use when you're dealing with pretty large logs, not little small ones that you might easily just split in half and then in quarters and be ready to burn them. If you just muscle your way through this, you're going to get pain in your joints. And so all of this is designed to use your body in an efficient, non-impactful way, but still get that speed and that whip of the axe and still get the massive weight of the sledgehammer, but just going easier on your joints. And here you'll see it from a different angle. First I take off the tip, and you can see a little ice flying off there. Now I'm going to do the same thing just in reverse. I'm going to split it down the middle first and then split it perpendicular, but it's basically the same principle. There we go. I'm just going to split off usable chunks. And here I have to pick up the log when it falls over. What some people do is put a tire on top, put the log they're splitting inside the tire, and then when it splits, it just bounces back off the side and stays more or less standing up, and you can split a whole bunch without having to retrieve anything that's fallen down. Now I'm going to load up my wheelbarrow to stack my wood where I want to. I use logs to increase the height. I don't really have to, it's just a technique you can use. And I don't overload my wheelbarrow because otherwise it gets too full and I might dump it on a corner and then I have to pick it all up again. So better to go with a little less weight but be secure. Now on the edge of my wood pile, I'm making these crisscross Lincoln log type columns, and this will be kind of like a bookend. And then within the bookends, I can then stack wood a little more loosely. And so it just takes a little time to find square and rectilinear logs to make that stack, to make it nice and stable and secure, because this is going to be holding back hundreds of pounds of wood. And once I get that stacked up, then I can just loosely stack the rest of the wood inside that. And on the next go around, I'll stack the crisscrosses higher and then loosely stack wood within the bounds of that column. And that's about it. Thanks for watching this video. Check out more videos on our YouTube page or come to our website, lowtechinstitute.org. You can find our blog, our podcast, and a lot of other information. Thanks for stopping by.